History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we review last week's effort, which is episode 12, Turkey. Now, if you haven't heard that episode, do go back and have a listen. Otherwise, there will be spoilers.
Hello and welcome to History Happened Everywhere, The Verdict. I'm here, I'm Ryan, this is Pete.
Yo.
And on the phone we have Paul Dersley.
Good evening.
Hello, Paul. How you doing, buddy? You okay?
Yeah, not too bad at all, and you?
Yes. We are excited to review with you today my effort last week, which was podcast 12 on Turkey in the years 3000 to 2000 BC, and the theme was science. So you've heard it, I assume, Paul?
Yes, I have.
So was the episode a turkey?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, you enjoyed it?
Oh, yes, I did.
Hey, well, that's a great start. I think it's an appropriate time, given that we're recording this on the 26th of November, to say Happy Thanksgiving to all of our American friends.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Paul, what are you grateful for?
Why are you talking about Thanksgiving?
Because we have American listeners, Paul. People who tune in from America and listen to you.
For all our American people, a happy
festival.
Thanksgiving. And you sort of think, well, A, we're British, and B, what about the poor Canadians who do Thanksgiving on a different day? He didn't do anything for them.
No, you're absolutely right, he didn't.
So why didn't you say anything on Guy Fawkes Night then?
Well, that is true. It's a fair point. We just slipped our minds. Moving on. So Turkey. What's your initial thoughts then, Paul?
I think the thing that stuck out most was Pete's amazingly good Shirley Bassey impression.
Bronze finger.
Yes. That sounds rather rude.
I enjoy a bit of karaoke. What I do not, it turns out, enjoy is listening back to recordings of me doing karaoke. That was not a comfortable re-listen for me.
No, I thought it was surprisingly good.
He's got a great voice. He's got a good voice. Yeah.
I think Dame Shirley would have a different view, but still, well, we're glad you enjoyed that. Are you familiar with this? A period of history you are keen on / interested in / knowledgeable about?
No, not really. It's a sort of I say before my time.
Yeah.
As we were saying sort of last week or a couple of weeks ago, the Romans is about the start of sort of my knowledge of history. So this has been sort of quite eye-opening.
And that was our experience, just how vivid the painting was of that time period.
But you didn't do any research. You asked Michaela Massa to do it for you.
Well...
That's a form of research. Secondary research.
Yeah, secondary research. So what stood out?
I think it was the information, broad brush, but it was the information in general about the society then. Sort of, you do not, as you said in the podcast, you don't expect there to be a society 5,000 years ago or a civilization 5,000 years ago. You do think it was still the hunter-gatherer society rather than a sophisticated city-based mercantile, even as you were describing society. It sort of put a bit of dressing on, you hear about the Fertile Crescent and civilization started around about that area. I suppose it's slightly wider than the Fertile Crescent, but, it was the first area after the Fertile Crescent.
You've got to stop saying the Fertile Crescent. It's starting to turn me on. Paul.
I don't know what the Fertile Crescent is.
Sounds sexy though, doesn't it?
Well, what is the...
If someone offered to show you the Fertile Crescent, you wouldn't say no, would you?
See, now I feel awkward asking him what the Fertile Crescent is.
Well,
I'm going to do it anyway.
You actually alluded to it in the podcast with, your summary of the plate tectonics making the soil so fertile
I see.
that area that the soil was so fertile in that area that they didn't have to keep on hunting and gathering. They sort of said, actually, we can stay here. And of course,
stuff keeps just growing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and of course, as you're saying, staying there allows a society to develop a hierarchy, move towards cities or towns, and then cities, and get much more sophisticated.
So where do you think you would sit in Bronze Age society then, Paul? Where do you see yourself occupation-wise?
Well, this is the usual question, isn't it? Where I say that I'd like to be is totally different to where I probably would be. I would probably be dead.
What do you mean? Well, I could see you sitting there and ordering people around.
Well, I don't think I'd have got to this age, and I am rather pathetic when it comes to sort of any physical exercise or anything. So, unless I could be some sort of shaman.
I mean, I'd have popped you down a mine, personally.
So, yeah, I'd like to be a shaman, but I reckon I would probably have been hounded out of the society and died young, taken by a woolly mammoth.
Taken by a woolly mammoth. Rest in peace, Paul Dersley. He went as he lived with the woolly mammoths. But this was a period of scientific discovery, and you're a scientist. Maybe you could be roasting some rocks and popping some ores together.
Well, yeah,
that's where I see him being.
Didn't realise that was the society where metallurgy started. So it sort of started the Bronze Age. Of course, I did think, did they find any aluminium ore?
With some bauxite?
Yes.
The ongoing tales of bauxite.
Because A, aluminium hadn't been discovered then, and B, you need much higher temperatures to get aluminium out.
All right, you're going to have to tell us how much higher. Like, would it have been possible if they'd known?
You need electricity.
So what is that? Like, I mean, I genuinely don't know. How do you make fire hotter?
Well, you need to be able to blow lots of air over it consistently.
Okay, well, they did have that. They had bellows. In the research, I saw the remains of ovens from this period, and on the sides of them, they have the holes on the side for the nozzles of the bellows.
Yeah.
And they're still there, like
a really big-lunged slave.
Hyperventilating. So it would have been impractical. They just wouldn't have been able to generate that level of heat.
Yeah, they wouldn't have been able to generate that heat. You just need it needs to be hot and sustainably hot as well.
And do you think, Paul, if we set you loose in the Anatolian mountains today, you could make bronze? Given someone to do the lifting and carrying for you, do you think you could put some bronze together?
I could give it a go. Would I just be the fabricator, or would I have to be the surveyor as well to identify the correct rocks?
I think we can. We'll bring you the rocks. If we get someone to fetch the rocks, who knows their.
I don't know. No, let's start with the whole. Let him be a prospector. How were you going to do at that? It took them years.
I did quite well at that.
See.
Could have been a prospector.
See, you nearly lost out on a prospector there.
Well, it's a scientific profession, isn't it? It's observation, so understanding the lie of the land, and certain plants might grow near certain deposits, etc.
That really stuck out to me when Dr. Master told me about the fact that that's the kind of things that they would have been looking for. These people would have been trained, these prospectors, to look for not just the rock itself. You're not just looking for a golden vein in a rock.
I haven't seen any. This is hard.
Yeah, and that actually they're looking at the types of plants and animals that are in the area. It sounds like a kind of chill life, if I'm honest. Just you and your backpack wandering around the hills.
You sort of wonder whether these people were considered religious or had some sort of extra knowledge because they could see these things
that others could.
They were there for everybody to see, but they could interpret these things to say, actually, when you see one type of rock, there's a fair chance that another economically important or is going to be very close by. And
you are effectively seeing the unseen, aren't you? There is, there's in this ground is a certain kind of rock, and people must be like, wow.
What is the chemical symbol for copper?
Wow, this has become a quiz. This is a development.
Right. I want to say, and I don't know why, but I want to say AU.
I want to say CU. AU's gold.
CU.
CU, Jimmy.
Pete wins that one.
Oh, what?
I'll do 3. Zinc.
Z. C.
ZN.
Ah, I was going to say that, and then I thought, well, I won't say that because that's stupid.
And the last one, tin.
I mean, obviously, I want to say TN.
I'm going to say G.
SN.
SN. What is the S for?
Stannum. It's from the Latin. The Latin for lead is stannum, so SN is...
Oh, Latin for lead was plumbum or something.
Not lead.
Tin.
Tin was, stannum, and lead is plumbum.
So what, are there any modern words that have spanum that relate to tin?
I don't know. They were sort of some of the elements also discovered by Humphrey Davy, like sodium and potassium. They follow their Latin names, natrium and kalium.
Right. Is this Davy of Davy lamp fame?
Yes, a chemist.
He invented the miner's hat lights, for those who are not familiar with Humphrey Davy.
Talking of chemists, there was a bunch of research that I did around medicine, which I couldn't fit into the podcast. It was based in Cyprus. So archaeologists have discovered what appears to be the remains of a chemist. Within a village, there would have been somebody who had access to a garden that grew specific types of herbs, either for medicine or for perfume. This was a manufacturing facility, and they even found like beakers and pots that you would find in scientist lab, in a chemistry lab, but made of ceramic rather than of glass. Like in those B movies, science B movies, where they have glass tubes linking up with bubbling liquid in them and all that.
Oh yeah, I've got some of those in the kitchen.
Of course you do.
Of course you do.
Yes. It's the corpses reanimating that I'm worried about.
It's alive. So they found remains of these, and the expectation is that these people were literally, it was like a factory, and they were just producing bottles of either perfume or maybe even both, medicine as well. And these were being spread around that area at the same time as well, as much as tin or bronze.
And of course, that is also a consequence of people sort of settling down in cities, having some sort of spare time to sort of use perfume and to have, functions and whatever that they can go off to those. So it's amazing that, down, and I think that was a very good sort of summary from saying, right from the forming of the Alps and the changes in the continental crust, etc., how that set up that area, A, for agriculture, and then B, that led to cities, and that led to all of the social changes as well, which then led to more leisure, which then led to more people needing to produce stuff for them. It's
as Pete rightly said during the podcast, they hit jackpot, the people that were living there at that time, really.
Yeah, some did, some didn't. Obviously, they're always winners and losers.
I mean, they also had access to, through that super network, trade network, they also had access to poppies and opium. They would have used that for a kind of morphine.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the operations that they were doing, of which they were doing a fair few, it seems. There's evidence of wounds that have healed, fractured bones that have been set perfectly. So, they were some sort of sign that somebody had anatomical knowledge and were able to provide decent healthcare.
And again, again, healthcare is a function of people being able to settle in cities. People are close together. People have the time to do that. People can specialize, as you were saying. In terms of medicine, I can remember. I think this must have been ages ago. Well, it was ages ago at school, but they used to do trepanning in the Stone Age, which is an absolutely amazing operation where they basically drill a hole through your skull.
Right.
When you started that, I thought you meant the trepanning in your skull.
So,
What kind of school is this?
well, the remedial steps were always ripe for experimentation.
So they were doing this in the Stone Age, were they?
Yeah, and so they found skulls that had these perfectly round holes drilled in them, and there is the religious thing at the time about letting the demons out or whatever, but actually medically as well, it relieves the pressure of water on the brain, and it does work.
I mean, you said that in such a way that I'm now thinking you've done it. But yes.
On some unsuspecting third former.
Yeah, and you would think that if they're doing that in the Stone Age, then they're doing that in the Bronze Age, and I'm sure there's evidence.
Oh, yes, they would be.
Skulls that show that people lived with this, which means that they must have had an understanding about not bacteria or like infection, but they would know about cleanliness. They would know how to care for the patient post-operation. This wasn't just, I'm going to drill into your head and then off you go, and it's luck if you survive.
Possibly, but don't forget though, in modern times, maybe not the 20th century, but it was certainly late in the 19th century, they was doing operations in lounge suits and didn't really understand, bacteriological infections, etc.
Yeah.
There's an aside, when you wear a suit, you have those buttons on the cuff.
Oh yeah, you have like a series of very small buttons, like 3 or 4 buttons on the cuff.
Yeah, now most of those are what's called blind nowadays, but if you go to a decent tailor, they still make them work. And they're called surgeon's cuffs.
Really?
Because, yeah, what they used to do is if you undo all those buttons, you can actually turn the cuff up so you can get a good 6 inches of bare arm. So you could sort of do the operation without having to take your jacket off.
Wow, that's amazing. So that is back to sort of being on board a ship or something, and you've got to chop the leg off of the cabin boy.
Yeah, so you sort of undo your surgeon's cuffs, roll it up, get your knife out, and whip it off.
That being said, though, like the 18th century, around then, I imagine more people died from infection and from surgery than would have died in the Bronze Age from surgery.
Oh yes,
I'm
absolutely.
guessing.
Why do you think that?
I don't have evidence for that other than my own opinion.
Feelings. Okay.
Fewer people, less pollution.
I think possibly what stands in your favour is in the Victorian era, you would have had the doctor doing operation after operation using the same tools, carrying that infection between each operation. Whereas if it's much more sort of few and far between instances, what you're not doing is your tools are drying out, and presumably you would clean them just out of pure human instinct to clean blood off things.
Yeah,
and the drying out will kill off the bacteria.
I think there's an element there of just experience, though, isn't there? Like if we're talking about chemists that are practiced and learned, and we're talking about, I don't want to use the word doctor, but like physicians that know about the anatomy, isn't it safe to say that surgeons would have had a similar level of experience?
I feel this is part of your thirst for an ancient civilization of great advancement.
Well, yes, of course, the theory is that this isn't knowledge that they've learned, but it's actually been passed down from many thousands of years before from ancient civilizations that we now no longer know about.
This is headed towards Atlantis, isn't it?
It existed, Pete. I'll find it.
Oh, it's Santorini, isn't it?
That's incredibly disappointing if it is.
Isn't Santorini, I haven't been there, but isn't it dry and above water?
Well, only about a fifth of what used to be there is. They think it's what ended the Minoan civilization in Crete.
Humans tend to live where there's water, right? And they'll be living on the coasts, and they'll be living on rivers, and those will have just been completely demolished over the past however many years. So we don't know. There could have been civilizations way before the Bronze Age where they were doing these things.
Yeah, it's possible actually. The concept of sort of lost knowledge is reasonably plausible, but only up to a point, because
you can't prove it.
I think we can be pretty certain nowadays using technology, carbon dating and using atmospheric oxygen and rings in trees. You could work out if there was a civilization 15 to 20,000 years ago that's totally unknown now, it would have left something in the record, and nowadays we would know about it.
I think the problem with the Victorians was that what happened was, unknowingly, conditions got worse because of the nature of compression of people in towns, repeat use of tools.
Yes.
Whereas previously you wouldn't be trepanning every 5 minutes, would you? You'd do it maybe once every 6 months, and between those 6 months you're actually using different tools, so accidentally you're using a sterile tool each time.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I mean, it's possible they also were doing trepanning every 5 minutes. We don't know. Yeah, and I'm guessing they weren't drilling though, Paul. I'm guessing that they were probably just cutting, right?
No, it would have been drilled because the edges were so smooth in the ones. If you were chipping it with a chisel, you would have edges. If you were drilling it with either a metal blade or a sharpened stone.
Obsidian, yeah.
So if you sort of think about, if you had quite a shallow angle at the point and you could twist that around.
What if you had a pair of compasses?
Oh, I see what you mean. I just think you're in danger then, aren't you, of like actually just pushing too hard and pushing that obsidian straight through the skull and into the brain.
Many, many times. Maybe even the people that we see now who have been trepanned perhaps they weren't trepanned, perhaps it was a weird form of execution. Or that would seem a bit silly.
Well, look, I'll trepan Paul with a chisel. Paul can trepan you with a drill, and we'll see which looks most like the ancient evidence.
Feels like you're not getting much in the way of trepanning.
Well, not everyone can be trepanned, Ryan. That's it's just the game, I'm afraid.
Well,
it's just the way the dice
I'm voting
rolls.
for a three-way trepanation.
Well, you're going to need to find a third method of trepanation.
We're coming to a point where you're going to have to grade the episode. I hate this point. I feel like we should.
This is the bit where you say that Ryan's not as good as me.
No, you see, Pete, you've got to understand this isn't about the grade. This is about us doing the podcast and enjoying it.
Okay,
Paul, give me the grade.
Give him an enjoying grade.
I should give Michaela Massa an A.
Oh, what?
He knows who did the work.
I'm not happy about that.
That's good.
Should you give me a C again? I'm going to be so annoyed.
Well, no, it's certainly not a C. It's whether it starts with a B.
If it's not a C, I would expect it to start with a B or an A. It could be an A.
B plus.
Yay!
Oh, yeah,
okay,
good.
That's
good.
fine. I'm going to accept the B plus, and I'm going to also, in the back of my mind, on behalf of Dr. Michaela Massa, accept his A.
I think it was an A-B truly well earned. It was a great show, I thought.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yes, it was. It was really interesting. Lots of stuff that I didn't know.
Makes you wonder if anyone's going to listen to this in 5,000 years' time, what they'd make of us. I mean, just think, 5,000 years into the future, there are people like us. Like, in my head, I can't even imagine what people would be like in 5,000 years' time. Can you imagine what... If you brought...
Well, I think we've said people are going to be the same. They're going to be whinging and moaning about things, and they'll have their first world problems as well, which are totally pointless and meaningless.
Well, I saw Barbarella at the weekend, and I can assure you it's going to be very different.
Oh, well, everyone's going to be wearing fur bikinis.
Pretty much.
In your mind. Paul, thank you very much. Thank you for such a lovely grade. I'm really pleased that you enjoyed it. I feel like we're letting you down because every show we're doing so far, you seem to be enjoying, and that disappoints me because I prefer it when you rant and rave. So I'm gonna do worse on my next one.
You'll have to do a bad one then.
Well, I've got good news for you for next week.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, Paul, you're a star. We love having you here. Thank you for doing the verdict with us.
Thanks.
Pete, anything to add before we close off?
My pleasure also. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much for listening to History Happened Everywhere.
The verdict.
Thanks for listening to History Happened Everywhere. I'm Ryan and he's Pete. And if you want to get in touch with either of us, you can do that through hhepodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can use HHE Podcast in any of the usual social media.
That's right. And, if you did enjoy the show and you enjoy it, let's help spread the word, get more people coming, and you can do that by rating and reviewing at your podcast provider.
We'd love to hear what you think, as long as it's nice.
Yeah, please be nice.
Be nice.
We're
Be
very
kind.
sensitive. Right, okay. So we're talking Turkey.
Let's talk Turkey.
Let's talk Turkey.
I suppose for our American listeners, that's appropriate.
Yeah, we should definitely mention that, shouldn't we?
No!